I can't tell the difference between my waking life and dreams.
What's going on, everyone? It's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Here's my video for Moon Knight episode 4 explaining the entire ending Asylum scene and what exactly is happening, so let's break it all down. If you clicked on this video, you're probably and mainly wondering if this is an illusion or reality, so if you like Marvel, the MCU, comics, and everything in between, subscribe to the channel, but other than that, let's get into the video. Let's go. Episode 4 ended with an insane switch up in not only pace, but appearance. With Khonshu imprisoned in stone and Mark losing his ability to summon the suit, the cost of that resulted in Harrow shooting Mark twice in the chest, to which he falls and presumably dies, until the screen comes back and everything is white. We see Mark wake up in what appears to be a psychiatric hospital, which I'll just refer to as the hospital from here on out. From there, we meet countless characters that we have seen over the past few episodes, with the two biggest including Layla and Harrow. So we're left to wonder the same thing Mark is thinking. Is any of this real? And we can actually look into the comics to possibly solve this confusion. So in 2016, and over those next 2 years, Jeff Lemire would come out with a 14-issue Moon Knight run, which heavily inspired this show and specifically made this whole sequence of events. In this run, Mark Spector wakes up in a hospital completely confused. He remembers a life as the Moon Knight, but everyone around him tells him that's not true, and this is a perfect run for a live-action Moon Knight story because it touches on essentially everything from his childhood to the beginning of Moon Knight and an overview of his identity disorder. And although it sounds crazy, his biggest tick is the doctor who refers to herself as Dr. Emmett. And if you're thinking it sounds familiar, it's because it does. Harrow served the same purpose in this episode, which sends Mark on a frenzy to believing nothing that he sees is currently real. Like in the show, the Doctor in the comics was Emmett in disguise, as was everything else. And as the story progresses, Mark Spector finds himself in an existential crisis where he begins to meet all of his alter identities, Moon Knight, Stephen Grant, and Jake Lockley. He is in and out of every different reality based on each alter identity. He wakes up as Steven and they're shooting a Moon Knight movie, which actually makes me wonder if this cameraman being left in episode 3 was intentional or not. I mean, I'm gonna say no, but based on the comics and this one being one of the most influential runs in the series, it would make sense. And then from there in the story, he wakes up driving a taxi as Jake on another page, so in this episode, I think we're starting to see similar events taking place. Everything is meant to make you believe it was all fake by referencing the cane and the ankle strap, but it actually wasn't. Mark is coming to terms with his identity disorder and is physically and mentally needing to work with all of his identities. However, currently he only sees Steven, and like I've theorized before, it does appear that something is wanting to break out of the locker in episode 2. Now if there is something or someone looking to break out, you can also tell that the sarcophagus is representing the same thing. The door is open, meaning the identity of course exists, but Mark still keeps Jake trapped, and the sarcophagus is meant to represent Jake wanting to break free, which is likely what Mark will have to do to become whole. Now just a quick side note, also in this comic story, Mark even kills Jake even though it's not real, with Mark referring to Jake's violent side that we have seen teased in episode 1 and 3. But it's also during this time he speaks with Khonshu and realizes this madness is Khonshu's doing. At first, Khonshu is trying to tell him that people are doing these illusions to him, but in due time you find out that it was Khonshu's attempt to break Mark's mind for the final time and use him as a host to leave the other void so he can return to Earth. Back in the day, it was believed that the Egyptian gods walked among us, which is exactly what Arthur Harrow says in this past episode, and their power grew the more people believed in them, but as time went on, people believed less and less of the gods until they decided to leave Earth, which then they were stuck in the other void. Now the other void is where all of them reside, including Khonshu. It's essentially a dimension away from Earth, and that is why they use avatars. All of these gods cannot return to Earth without one, which is why Khonshu wants to do the same. They can only project into people's minds that they are real, unless they had a host that they could take over, which would allow them to return. So we may have a case of Khonshu being the real villain of the story potentially. Like I said, in that Lemire run, Mark found out that Khonshu was behind everything, and everything was practically real, but at the same time, it was an illusion in a way. Khonshu merged past and present events of his life in an attempt to break him. We even saw Bushman, who is rumored to be in this show and who was the mercenary they referred to in this past episode. It's likely we even see the true origin of Moon Knight in the night that he was supposed to die in a flashback with Bushman, which is why this story is such a good one to pick for this series. And this will also explain to us the entire situation with Layla's father. Knowing that Mark can't trust Khonshu anymore, and after meeting up and talking with all of his alter identities in this illusion of some sorts, he realizes that he must become one with them and to stop running from his identity disorder. which is what makes him not only who he is, but merging and accepting it fully will make him the strongest version of himself. All of his identities never needed Khonshu, and they break him, freeing him of Khonshu's pain. Now eventually they do resume their bond in the future, but in the meantime he continues to be the Moon Knight vigilante using the suit without Khonshu. I really recommend going to read this if you want. I kind of did a summary of that, so if you want all the details, of course, go check it out. But to tie it back to the show, in the MCU, the suit is tied to Khonshu, and Khonshu has also been turned to stone, so is it really him doing this, or is it more of Amit? And you may be asking, are Khonshu and Amit maybe even working together? But I think we can actually throw that idea out right away, because Arthur Harrow doesn't seem to admire Khonshu at all anymore, and in fact thanks him for his victory at the end of episode 3. So how this could play out in episode 5 and 6, and I think what we're about to see is of course this journey of Mark strengthening his mind and becoming one with his identities, but also freeing Khonshu. We know we will see Mark suit up again and that Khonshu will return based on promo, but how and why is the question. Like every Marvel Studios project, they adapted some elements, but I don't think Khonshu will be behind everything. In that run, Anubis also brought them through the other void, which is where I believe this scene is taking place, and we also meet Hathor in the final seconds, the Hippo-Egyptian god of music and love. Now I believe that she will take Anubis' spot, who originally helped them in the comics, but she will be the one to kind of guide them back to Khonshu or just across the other void. In general, I would love to see if Anubis actually exists in the MCU because I don't really think he does. Part of the powers that Amit has come from Anubis, which is the ability to weigh scales, which is another reason why I believe that Hathor takes the place of Anubis in this story. An interesting take is if this whole scene is actually a comparison to the Field of Reed, something that was mentioned back in episode 1. It was likely referring to hint at the fact that Mark had died before and was revived, but Steven had no idea. So what we could get in this sequence is the actual origin of Moon Knight and that night that Mark Spector was supposed to die. This would then be revealed to all the other identities on how this all began, because in order to become one with all of them, transparency will be needed. We've started to see Mark and Steven become more transparent with each other, but now of course with Jake possibly being added into the picture, they haven't met him yet and they'll need to talk it through. Marvel actually sent out episode 5 by accident to some of the bigger people in the press about a week and a half ago, so they have already seen it, and a few have mentioned that Mark's Jewish heritage and religion plays a big role in episode 5. And with the director also confirming this for the finale as well, it'll be really interesting to see what avenue they take. Of course in this one he was also shot, so even though everything is an illusion in his head, it still is all real in a way. The timeline is going to be the most confusing part, and like I said, if we do get the origin, who knows, like if it's from the comics, is it back in the day, are we seeing it in present time? That'll be the most confusing part, and that really can't be answered until we get to episode 5, so we'll see. I have heard episode 5 has a lot of dark aspects to it, which is really interesting, so I would expect Mark to come to terms with his identities, possibly seeing Jake Lockley for the first time, and then seeing the whole origin of Moon Knight, which will also show us Bushman. So hopefully this cleared things up about that ending scene, because when I first saw it I was extremely confused as well. But this is the basis of what to expect, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, so post all your questions or theories that you have in the comments below. You can follow me on Twitter at AnotherMarvelG for daily news and updates, or join my Discord for daily chats. The links are in the description as always. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like, and other than that, I just want to say thank you. I'm Another Marvel Guy, and I'll catch you on the blip.